The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. St. Louis Cardinal baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We have a guest for Gene Hutmaker today, who is the host. Gene, why don't you introduce the guest?
Okay, we have Alan Blumkin here today, and we're... Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Are we on?
Yes.
We are.
Okay, I would like to introduce Alan Blumkin. He is a longtime baseball fan and knows more about baseball than those on the MLB station.
Oh,
hello,
sure.
Alan.
Thank you. That's not hard.
More than all of them put together on the MLB station.
That's what I meant.
That one.
Yeah.
He is a Sabre superstar. Sabre. This would be a good idea to review what Sabre is. And Alan, you've been a member for many, many years.
40 years. Is going on 44 years, yeah.
Wow.
Sabre is a organization. The Sabre stands for Society of American Baseball Research. It was founded in 1971 by 16 people up in Cooperstown, and there's only one founder that's still alive, one of the original 16. And it's just exponentially has grown over the years, and they publish books, they conduct research, they conduct a convention every year. There's local conventions. There's one here tomorrow, which I'm skipping for a variety of reasons. But I've made the point of it is I've made a whole bunch of friends, sometimes very, very close friends over the years that have been in the organization. And it only costs about $35 a year.
Bring to this network, Al.
Yeah, it only costs about $35 a year for membership if you're a senior, like I am, like we all are.
Well, we certainly are.
And the sabermetrics term is originated from the extensive mathematical and formula has come up measuring the performance of players, and that's something that I am not mathematical, so there's a lot that they put out in sabermetrics and analytics that I don't understand.
Okay. That brings us to a good question of the new age statistics. Which ones do you like and which ones do you not like?
Okay, I don't like WAR. I have no idea how that's calculated. And I do like the addition of OBP, which is on base percentage, and OPS, which is on base plus slugging. I think that really shows a measure of a hitter's effectiveness, and the pitcher's whip, which is walks and hits per innings pitched, is also a good measure of a pitcher's effectiveness. But all this esoteric, how WAR is. I was looking at the BaseballReference.com's list is by WAR, and I was looking up Andrew Jones the other day, and I saw he had a lifetime average of 254, and he's ranked like in the top 15 or 20 center fielders of all time, which I think is ridiculous because the guy was a mediocre hitter at best.
Well, it depends on if you include his power numbers and maybe his on-base percentage. Even though he only hit 252, he may have had a terrific on-base.
Killebrew is in there with a 256, but Killebrew had his power numbers were much greater than Andrew Jones. Of course, Killebrew was not a good fielder anywhere, whether it was first or the outfield. But
Andrew Jones was, which brings us to what the topic we're going to talk about today, which is the Hall of Fame, and there are two controversies as I see it, one of which is, should a man get into the Hall of Fame without his mitt? And we were talking off the air a little bit about Edgar Martinez not making it this year. Pretty much a cinch to make it down the road. He came very close, like 20 votes short, and what have you. I'll ask Gene, should a player have to wear a glove effectively, be a contributor as a complete ball player to be considered for the Hall of Fame? Gene Hutmaker.
Well, in Martinez's case, he did play 546 games at third base, which is close to 4 years. I know it's not enough, but if you're going to be a DH, you have to really be really good at it. And he was really good at it. And personally, I would put him in. The
right.
DH is a regular thing right now.
In a sense, DHs are underrated because not everybody has the temperament to just come up 4 times a day and be able to channel his energy on the bench, stay active, stay in the game, that kind of thing. And
that's a real factor that you bring up.
Right. Some are good. Al, do you remember some great hitters that just didn't do well as a DH? Anybody come to mind?
Not offhand, but basically, there are players who play positions that they feel that they're part of the game instead of going, sitting in the dugout every time it goes out in the field. I do think there are several players, one being, from the 50s, one being Dale Mitchell, who was benched by Al Lopez after 1953 because he had a very weak arm, throwing arm. And Dale Mitchell was somebody who was playing 50 games a year until they sold him to the Dodgers in 1956. And this is somebody that would have been very, very good as a designated hitter. There are players who, pre-DH who would have had, probably had very good careers, but they wouldn't. Dusty Rhodes, is another example that he couldn't play the field at all very well.
Dick Stewart is a guy on your
Dick Stewart, there's a whole bunch of these types that could have been, and I'm very mixed on the DHs. I think that when David Ortiz becomes eligible, that he's going to get in first try.
But he has PED.
And then if he gets in first try, that'll probably open the floodgates.
Well, a lot of anti-PEDers, which I am, don't count the 2003 testing all that valid because there was several flaws in that. So
are you talking about the committee, the
104 that failed the test?
Okay. There were flaws in the test, you mean?
Huh? There
were flaws in the test itself?
Yeah, I believe it was like some of the stuff that was banned, it wasn't. And then I think Garcia Parra was saying that some players that wanted to have testing did not take the test, so they came up as a failure, so they would have to impose the testing. So they would come up as a failure even though they didn't take it because they wanted to have testing because they weren't users.
Oh, wow.
That was another
reverse psychology there. That's carrying it a little diabolical, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, that's what, I think Garcia Parra was the one on the radio saying that.
Well, the one thing about the DA, getting back to that for a second, when it first came out, it was described as a position that would be good for a player that likes to come off the bench and pinch hit. And now there are some players, good hitters, that just couldn't pinch hit, just couldn't sit around for 8 hours, go crazy nuts, waiting to come up, and couldn't handle it. Can you guys think of any pinch hitters over in the 50s and the early 60s when we were growing up that were particularly good at pinch hitting?
Well, Smokey Burgess, for one. Dave Philly, toward his later years, he once got 8 pinch hits in a row.
And they used to say Jerry Lynch in a pinch.
Yeah, Jerry Lynch is another one, yeah. Dusty Rhodes. There were a number of guys like that. And I think, when it started, if they found that some player couldn't handle, that role mentally, that they were weeded out pretty quickly.
Okay. Let's, Gene Hutmaker, get to your main controversy, and that is pretty much that anybody who was tainted with the PED shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I think that's pretty much your opinion.
Well, I think it depends on the density of the smoke. Personally, I wouldn't have voted for IROD because in that test of 104, when they asked him, "Are you on the list?" His smoke for that is, he said, only God knows. He didn't deny it. So that's the linkage with him. Plus that he shrunk after the testing began. But they said that I guess they thought that the smoke wasn't dense enough for him, the voters. But the way I look at it, on a parallel, if you're in college and you get A's and you get caught cheating, do you still graduate cum laude? No, you probably get kicked out. So I think with baseball, you don't get into the Hall of Fame if you're a user, depending on the smoke that you have. And Bonds and Clemens definitely have this smoke. There's no doubt about it. Somebody said there's no positive test, and Bonds even admitted it. And Clemens, you had the McNamee, and then you had Andy Pettit throw him under the bus. So they were definitely users.
Yeah, Clemens also, in his last couple of years with Boston, was mediocre, and then he went to Toronto as a free agent and met Jose Canseco.
And he turned into Walter Johnson.
Yeah.
Right. Would you say that the game is clean? Go from the spectrum. It's clean of PEDs at this point, or it's just being covered up better, and that there is many players using it, and or using PEDs or human growth hormones, which there's no test for, and that could be very prevalent according to some.
I think the good players probably aren't doing it. I think people that would be doing it in the major leagues are marginal players that got there by doing it because they have nothing to lose. If they get caught, they get caught. And then they have 3 strikes. So.
And they have 3 strikes, and there's always the fight between the testers and the testees. Are they covering up? Masks going back and forth, chemists fighting back and forth to keep it going. I think it's still prevalent, and I don't think it's necessarily used as much for bulk as recovery.
Well, that's what Big Mac said. McGuire said he wasn't doing it to enhance himself. He was doing it basically to recover. He's trying to make even Pettit. They're both trying to say, and I can understand that too. They're trying to help the team by recovering quicker, not necessarily.
Well, I could understand that to a certain extent, but to say that for Mark McGuire to say that he didn't use it for bulk is absolutely ludicrous. And part of the reason he had to do all that recovering, injury-wise, was that bulk that he said didn't matter was immense. The guy went from 180 pounds to 270, and he was a giant, and the problem with that is, from a physiological standpoint, the ligaments and the tendons of your body just can't handle the bulk. You can't build up ligaments. You can't do exercises to make them stronger, to hold all that bulk. So I think it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was he recovering from injuries and used steroids to recover, or were the steroids themselves the cause of the injuries?
Well, you remember back in the day when we collected baseball cards in the 50s, and everybody was kind of slender. And Duke Snyder, I think, said that he would get fined. Any player would get caught weightlifting, they would get fined because they didn't want bulk. They wanted to be agile and have snap. They didn't want bulk. And if they ever got caught weightlifting on the Dodgers, they would get fined.
Right. And one of the arguments that they've been using on Facebook for Bonds and Clemens, their supporters saying that, well, they put Selig in the Hall of Fame, who was the enabler of all this, but Selig was put in. Not the writers don't elect the executives, and Selig was put in by one of the committees that they have there.
The Veterans Committee, yeah.
Yeah, and when they put him in, a lot of people were screaming, and I said they lowered the bar when they put Bowie Kunin.
Well, I'm against. They want to have them in the Hall of Fame. They should not be in with the players.
Yeah.
You want to take a 14, 15-year-old to the Hall of Fame. They don't want to see Barrow or
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Any of the executives.
They want to see players.
Yeah.
And when these guys are on the veterans ballot, they're taking, and they're only allowed, I think, 4 votes. They're taking votes away from, like Miller's on it, and he's taking votes away from a player. Maybe Ted Simmons would have gotten in if, stuff like that, because sometimes they take the vote away, but you're only allowed 4.
Well, you mentioned the name Miller. There's a man, Marvin Miller, who needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely no question about that.
But he'll never get one of the exec votes.
Yeah.
There's usually 4 execs on the committee, and you need 12 votes. So for that to happen, he'll have to get. Naturally, all the players will vote for him, and then he has to get a couple. All the media has to vote for him, because I don't think any exec would vote for him.
No, but that just gives you an idea that if you're not going to vote for him for one's own personal biases, and you can imagine that baseball executives and the front office, I mean, he changed the game. He changed it for them. Of course, they're not going to vote for him. They shouldn't have a vote, pure and simple. No matter what we say, and it's been changed so many times. It's been bastardized with the veterans committees.
Yeah, they keep on changing it.
They keep on changing it. It's just not. You can't say there's any objectivity there whatsoever.
Well, they make it on who they want to get in, because they select the screening committees, and so they could select on who they want. Yeah, I think like. When Oliva and Allen become due again, I think that they may be front runners for their particular era in 2020.
There's a few. I'd like to see Minnie Minoso in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm very big on Minoso.
Definitely.
I don't know if he can become eligible again.
In 2020.
2020. That's when Hodges comes up again.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of people in that one.
Yeah, I can't imagine Hodges not being in after all this time. He's of all the players that are out and not in, and there are a number of them that are in and not out that I disagree with. One of them being your Enos Slaughter, your Cardinal Enos Slaughter. Do you think Enos Slaughter's a Hall of Famer, Gene?
Yeah, well, he has a 300 lifetime average. He has 2,300 hits, and he lost 3 prime years right in the middle of his career to World War II, which would have gave him close to 3,000 hits. and he was a runner-up MVP, and twice he came in third. And I know he was kind of ornery, and but he played hard against everybody, not just I know that Jackie Robinson spiking was his major thing that they said. But 2,300 hits when you served 3 years in World War II. I think that would cover. Plus, he had a 300 batting average.
Okay, Al Blumkin on Enos Slaughter.
Yeah, I think he was good enough because a lot of the years that he played, especially in the early 40s, so they livened the ball up in 1948 for a few years. I think that a lot of the hitters during, say, from 1940, the early 40s, suffered because the emphasis for a couple of years went back to pitching.
Okay.
The emphasis on pitching, which got to an extreme in the 60s, cost players like Veda Pinson and others, Billy Williams, Ron Santo, even though they're in, there were quite a few players who hitters that were cost a lot because of the conditions at that point.
Okay. Here's one for Gene.
Yeah.
Ron Santo is in, and Ken Boyer is not. Would you address
Santo generally, I personally, I think they should both be in, but Santo got all that sympathy stuff, and it was a shame because why didn't they give it to him before he passed away? But definitely, there's no way you can say that he was better than Ken Boyer, or Ken Boyer was better than him. They're pretty much on a par. But the one thing about Boyer had the signature season when he was the MLB Player of the Year and the National League MVP and the World Series hero.
I think one of the things that hurt him was the drop-off after 1964 was huge.
Yeah, well, at 33 at that time, Dick Rowe, too, was the same age, but that was pretty much it then. The ones that were able to hang on until their late 30s or even 40 were the ones who made the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame loves accumulators. They don't like players that fall off the table fairly quickly, no matter how good they've been before that. They love accumulators. Like Eddie Murray has 500 home runs without ever hitting more than 33 in a season.
And then you had
you can talk about if you want to.
Or a player that gets 3,000 hits because he plays 20 years. Yeah, 3,000 hits because he plays 20 years.
How about Henry Aaron? And he wasn't known as a home run hitter.
Well, he did it. He produced for years and years and years.
Right.
Henry Aaron is not in there because like a Craig Biggio or somebody like that got 300 hits over 20 seasons.
No question, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But you can say that part of his records was he being an accumulator. Remember, he played all the way into the DH era. He had a couple of years in Milwaukee with the Brewers.
Yeah, but he was done by the time he went to the Brewers. He was basically done. And you look at his numbers all through the years, through the year that he broke the record, 1974, and they're excellent. You don't see any 260s in there.
It was like a
I contend that Boyer's fall-off was magnified by the fact that he came to the Mets and didn't do very well for them. And that's New York press, and you're in the limelight every day in New York.
And that was the time of the enlarged strike zone also that we just mentioned, from 1963 to 1968.
Yeah, I call that era dead ball too.
Yeah, Mickey Mantle suffered then. Even the Hall of Famers suffered too. Aaron.
Oh yeah.
They all their averages went down somewhat.
And then, as baseball would have it, in their infinite wisdom, they threw the baby out with the bathwater and lowered the mound.
And
plus they expanded again. Yeah.
That's another thing, of course. Yes. In '69, whereas it was a different game after expansion, of course.
That always happened. You always get more. You're facing a team and then the other teams also lost pitching too, whether they be setup men or whatever.
The thing is when you expand, you bring in pitchers that especially pitchers that have before the expansion would never have made it to the major leagues. Now, of course, everybody's carrying 13 pitchers. it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and the number of pitching changes are mind-boggling, and how that clogs up the game. Really, it ruins the flow of the game.
Yeah, back in the 50s, 60s, you were going 9 innings. You figured that the guy was going 9 innings.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something real interesting. I'm preparing for the upcoming fantasy baseball league, and I just play a simple Yahoo league. But in order for me to prepare for the draft, what I use is the statistic that Al talked about a little bit before when we were talking about New Age statistics. It's OPS plus, or OPS.
On base plus slugging.
Plus slugging.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention to you, Al, when you went over that stat, which I think is one of my favorites, is terrific stat. It's also a terrific stat in reverse, where you can you go to MLB.com or ESPN, or any of these things. They compile stats in so many different ways, and they qualify them in so many different ways that they now can qualify pitchers in OPS against pitchers, so that the best pitchers have the lowest OPS against them, and they have a list of the 50 best pitchers.
Oh, they use the whip for that. They use walks and hits per inning. That's the main stat that they use now. It's it's not perfect, but that's what they use.
Well,
if you're under one, you're terrific. Is
as good as 4 because it shows you who's hitting with power against you.
Yeah, and the thing with OPS is you get if one of these the players now will strike out 200 times a year, bat 220, like this Chris Davis on Baltimore. It's 220, strikes out 200 times a year, and walks very infrequently. In fact, a close friend of mine who's a huge Yankee fan hates Bobby Richardson because Bobby Richardson had a career on-base percentage of .299, and he figures that Richardson's lack of on-base cost Mickey Mantle tons of RBIs.
Very good point. Very good point. But they weren't measuring that type of statistics back then.
No, back then, of course not, no.
Yeah. Another point that I wanted to make, which is somewhat off the subject, when I'm compiling this list of pitchers and trying to see who I could move up on the list that they offer you and all this, they listed complete games. Kubler had 5, and there was one other in the top 50 of lists of pitchers who had 5. I can't remember who that was. And after that, the highest amount of complete games for any pitcher in baseball was 2. 2 guys had 5. Maybe 12 guys had 2, and maybe another 12 guys had 1.
Yeah, let me throw this one at you. Before 1951, when they changed it to 1 inning per game, on the schedule, the qualification for the ERA title was 10 complete games.
Whoa. They based it on complete.
They changed it to 154 innings in 1951. Now it's 162 since the first expansion. But before 1951, it was 10 complete games. You believe that?
Yeah. I want to ask you, I forgot, did they make it 162 games in conjunction with expansion?
Yeah. They made 162 innings in conjunction with expansion, yeah.
Oh, okay, no, but how many games did the 61 Angels play, for instance?
162.
And the 1960 Pirates, how many did they play?
154. National League didn't go to 10 teams until 1962.
Okay, so
yeah.
Did the National League play 154
Before
games
in 1961?
In 1961?
Yeah.
And the American League played 162.
162, yeah.
Okay, so that was an inequity right there.
Yeah.
That folks should have picked up on, that allowing that to happen. Also, Al, would you explain? I have a lot of things hanging after 4 years of conversing with you. Would you explain the rule change in expand? Boy, it's the exact rule change just slipped my mind. I'll get back to that. But there's here it is. I want to know. In 1961, when the American League expanded, there were certain rules that enabled folks, say, teams like the Angels to come on strong. They were contenders almost immediately. And
no, they changed the expansion rules.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, the American League had to freeze their rosters at a certain point to make. They basically had to increase, have the roster, what they call 40-man rosters now, and put prospects on the, to be eligible, and they can only protect, I think it was 15. And the Angels wound up out of the expansion draft with Dean Chance, Jim Fugosi, and the catcher Bob Rogers. Jim Fugosi and the catcher Bob Rogers. And the next year, when the National League, they worked a certain policy. So the National League, when the then Colt 45s and the Mets drafted, the ones who were eligible were people who were going to be released or sent to the minors or cut or whatever.
Okay.
Because the National League, they didn't have to protect the prospects the way the American League did.
I was a kid when the original Mets were formed, and I really looked at that draft, and I said to myself, boy, some of these players being available, it's going to be good when the Mets get them. Felix Mantilla was one. Yeah. Elio Chacon was one. These were pretty good contributing players to good ball clubs. And
they were not everyday players.
Right. That's very true. And the ones that were everyday players in the past, like Gus Bell and the
they were past. They were on the downside. In fact, Paul Richards, who was running Houston during that time, after the draft lists were publicized, they said, "I want to thank all the National League owners for their generous, their generosity." Of course, he meant that very, very sarcastically.
Yeah. Well, as a fan, I didn't see it. I was too young to realize that these guys peak out. And not only that, injuries. Snyder came to him a year later after the draft. He was washed up. Gil Hodges had that bad knee. Gene Woodling was with them for a while.
Ashburn had a good year and quit.
Yeah, well, he said that he wouldn't sit on a bench for them.
Right.
And Snyder and Hodges were teammates on the Mets for about 6 weeks in 1963 before Hodges got the managerial job with Washington.
Right.
And there's a story I read. I posted this on Facebook a while back. Somebody took a picture of Gene Woodling, a card. I put down the Stengel, when Woodling came over to the Mets, he was sitting next to Stengel during the game where they were doing their usual, thing. And Stengel turned to Woodling and said, "It ain't like the old days, is it?" I know Gene will get a kick out of that because he's such a huge Yankee fan.
Yes.
Well, I actually didn't mind Gene Woodling because his name was Gene, and I identified with all the Genes back then. Gene Kelly, Gene Cooper, Gene Autry.
Gino Cimoli?
Yeah, Gino Cimoli. He was, he's the one that got he led off that big inning against the Pirates in that inning in 1960.
Gene Woodling had a bad year in 1954, because of that, they kept our Nora and they shipped Woodling to Baltimore when they got Lawson and Turley.
You know, the Yankees are known for making great deals, but I can think of another guy under the same circumstances that they would have been better off keeping, and that was Jackie Jensen, who they traded early.
Stengel didn't like him.
Why is that? Just curious.
Because he just didn't like his skills, and and it was crowded because they had when they traded him, they had an outfield of Woodling, Bauer, and Mantle, and he wasn't going to get to play very much.
And a right-handed hitter in Canyon, who was a good Fenway hitter. Yeah.
So he was there with Washington for a year and a half, and then they, as they did with a lot of the players that they had back then in Washington. It wasn't quite as bad as the Yankees and the Kansas City A's, but Boston, Washington, because of the Griffith-Cronin connection, was up there, let's say.
I'm sure I've said this before, but I think the most interesting Boston Red Sox outfield, 1958, they had Williams in left, Pearsall in center, and Jackie Jensen in right. And I thought that was just a great outfield.
That was it until I dealt Pearsall to the Indians. I think it was after 1959, and Jensen retired, because he didn't want to fly. Retired after 1959. Came back for 1 year in 1960. He didn't play in 1960. Came back in 61, and then quit permanently.
Right.
And Williams quit after 60.
Died a very young man, as a matter of fact.
55. Yeah, died of a heart attack.
Hey, there's a Facebook baseball aficionado that Wayne told me passed away. A fellow by the name of Bowman. He's a Cubs fan. He's been on the network on Wayne's show once or twice, and I heard from Wayne that on Facebook today he passed away. So, hey, rest in peace. Any baseball fan, fanatical fan, deserves to live and have to live and see what your team is doing to you.
Gene, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'm very active in a group, Facebook group that my friend Jim Hauer in Pittsburgh created called Baseball Sweet 16.
Okay.
And it covers the, from 1901 to 1960.
Okay.
Yeah, I do profiles on it from players from the 50s, and there's this guy out in Ohio, John Leckweiler, that has so much stuff he posts every day, and he seems to know everything about guys that go up there for cups of coffee. It's a very, very good site. I think you'd like it.
Okay, I'll look for that.
Okay, if you request to get in, I can put you in.
Okay, I also want to make mention of a guy on Facebook. I don't think he has a page of his own or a group of his own. He's Norman Said. And
don't know the name, no.
He publishes pictures, just some great pictures. A ball player that I can't find on Google anywhere. You look for him. Just really terrific pictures. So if you look for Norman Said, give him a little shout out on Facebook in terms of coming up with some eye candy for those of us who are eroticized by, not literally eroticized, but I see a good picture of a ball player and a certain angle or a certain expression and stuff. It's cool.
Facebook had a field day about a week or two ago when it was Don Morsey's birthday.
I missed that.
And there were all sorts of pictures of him. People put up with his cards and elsewhere.
Somebody said he looked like a taxi cab with the doors open.
Well, that's the kind of nickname. Ernie Lombardi was Schnoz.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I want to complete the show with the Hall of Fame talk that I'm going to place this way. I want you start with Al. Give me the 5 players that didn't get in that you would have liked to see get in.
You mean off the current ballot or just?
Yeah,
forever?
off the current ballot, off the top of your head.
Okay, off the top of my head, I'd like to see Fred McGriff in.
Okay.
I'd like to see Omar Vizquel in. I'd like to see, I think he's passed, but Lou Whitaker. I'd like to see, Mariano's going to come in next year. Lee Smith, who I think has been overlooked very much in those, has been ignored. That's about the recent guys. That's probably about it.
Okay. Would you like to see Martinez get in, Edgar Martinez?
I am not a fan of the DH.
Okay.
Okay, that may change because he has no, as far as I know, he has no, scandal about him, no heads or anything like that. So I could deal with it if he got in. But, Bonds and Clemens, I think it's tragic. But I'm like Gene, I'm hard line on that.
Yeah, I understand you are, but you have to take one has to take into consideration that a guy like Clemens was pitching against guys who were on PEDs, and a guy like Bonds was batting against pitchers, especially relief pitchers, who were more than certain to be on.
You don't get better at age 37. I'm sorry.
No. So that Nolan Ryan, for instance.
Nolan Ryan is the most overrated pitcher, one of the most overrated pitchers in the history of baseball.
Okay.
I can go on forever about him. I won't bore you.
No, that doesn't bore me because Nolan Ryan left the Mets and he demanded to leave the Mets. And the one time I met Nolan Ryan, he looked right through me. And
he's never close to winning a Cy Young Award. He lost more games than any pitcher in the 20th century, and his total career walks are a tremendous number ahead of whoever's second.
One question about Ryan, though. He did play like 15 years with 500 type teams, and
he never made them better. He's always pitched to the level of the teams.
But he did get the AL Pitcher of the Year award for 1 year.
Yeah, he also had a year with Houston where he led the league in the ERA and strikeouts and was 8-16.
8-16.
I just don't feel that he, one of the stats that has been created over the years. It's not something that's published. Is called wins against team, and you compare the pitcher's winning percentage with the teams he played on. Seaver is one of the highest ever.
Hey, you know who's one of the highest ever, ironically, is Whitey Ford.
I know that, yeah. Whitey Ford pitched better than the Yankee teams he was on.
Right.
Seaver is one of the high, at one point was second only to Walter Johnson with this. And Ryan finished, he won 32 games more than he lost. He was 324 and 292. Lost more games than anybody in the 20th century. And strikeouts and no-hitters are flash numbers. They're not numbers of exactly how the guy performs over a whole body of work. That's my opinion.
Especially no-hitters.
Yeah.
No question about that. I think strikeouts are more than a flash number because you strike a guy out, he doesn't move the runner over. He doesn't.
Yeah, you're putting guys on base with the walks like he did. That's the difference between. One of my friends pointed this out a number of years ago. The difference between Ryan and pitchers like Seaver and Carlton and Jenkins, Palmer, and all those pitchers from that era is the walks.
Okay. You mentioned pitchers of that era.
Yeah.
I will ask Gene Hutmaker how Gibson compares to Marichal and Koufax.
I think they're all pretty much on a par. Actually, nobody put defeaters in a team like Koufax did. And Marichal was probably the most enjoyable with his high kick, just from that standpoint. And Gibson was probably the toughest. He was like, you didn't mess with him. He was Drysdale, but a lot better.
Okay, Al, if you had a game to win, which of those three pitchers, a game you had to win,
Koufax.
World Series, which of those pitchers would you?
Koufax.
Yeah, no brainer there.
Now, Gibson lost the seventh game of the World Series against the Tigers when Kurt Flood screwed up a fly ball.
I think that might have been a Mickey Lolich.
Yeah, it was the Mickey Lolich series, yeah.
That was a good series, by the way. That was 68.
Yeah.
And,
I was in basic training during that series. I never saw it until I got the highlight film.
I was on my honeymoon, and my wife never lets me forget it. If you want to hear the story, in the Game 6, Game 6, we were by the pool in Miami. Everybody went to Miami from New Jersey then. Anyway, we're at the motel, and I go, I knew the series was about to be starting. I go, let me go get some towels. And I went in there, and the Tigers had that 10-run inning.
Yeah.
In the Game 6, McLean was pitching.
Yeah.
And I watched the whole inning, and it took me by the time I came out, I go, what took you so long? Oh, I couldn't find the towels.
Yeah, well, you were in Miami. I was at Fort Dix.
Okay.
I think you probably had a little bit better time than I did.
Yeah, that was me. That was me in '67 when the Cardinals won it in '67. I was down Fort Dix.
Were you in the reserves?
No, I was getting ready to get out. Now I was in Vietnam in '66.
Oh wow!
Came back. I was.
I spent 6 years in the reserves. Yeah.
In Vietnam, I got up at 2:00 in the morning. We were in base camp, and I heard him talking about the Mo Drabowski getting some kind of strikeout record in the World Series. And I go, really? How do you know that? They said the Armed Forces station is on the communications bunker. It's manned all night, and they had the Armed Forces game on. So I wasn't that far from my tent. So they woke.
Thank you for your service.
Well, I thank Lyndon B. Johnson for that one. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I told the guy to wake me up. I'm the third bunk over. Wake me up a half hour before the game. So I wasn't that far. A short walk. And he woke me up, and I went there, and I heard the game, and that's the game that Willie Davis made the 3 errors in the one inning.
Yeah, that was Koufax's last game.
And then it was pretty interesting because I was in a bunker, and the next game, Wally Bunker won.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Dodgers got 2 runs in the third inning of the first game, and that was it.
Yeah. That was sort of like the Yankees in '63.
Yeah. But they broke all the negative hitting records at the Yankees in '63 in that series.
Well,
I mean, who could think a guy named Palmer who nobody knew was going to be Koufax?
Yeah, isn't it amazing how they break all the good hitting records in '60 and lose? I don't think anybody scored as many runs in a World Series.
Well, the 7 games they scored 55 runs. Yeah, they hit 336.
36. Yeah,
they had set all sorts of 7-game series records for extra base hits, this, that, and every other thing, and they wound up losing.
Well, they shouldn't have messed with the law.
Well,
you've mentioned Al, that the only time you ever rooted against
the Yankees in the series was 1960.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, I thought, the story, a friend of mine snuck into, we were 17 at Pitt as freshmen, snuck in to Forbes Field after the 8th inning. We saw live the Mazeroski home run.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were already a Pirate fan for how long?
I became a Pirate fan after the Dodgers and Giants. Well, I was never a Dodger fan, but basically I picked them up in the mid-50s when they were losing 100 games a year.
Right.
And
after the Giants and Dodgers left, who did you root for in the National League? The Pirates right away?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
And then were you influenced to go to school in Pittsburgh because of that?
Of course.
Okay.
I made sure that when my father took me out, who was not a baseball fan, took me out to see the place that they were in the West Coast. So I wouldn't be tempted to go there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the thing is also is that they were so bad for so many years, but it was funny. It was different being bad back then than it is being bad now, because of all the money involved.
But Branch Rickey got him back pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he got them back. And
did
then,
you ever waver in that series in terms of your fandom?
No.
Not for 1 minute.
No, my favorite, two favorite numbers out of that is in the seventh game, Roger Maris went 0 for 5 and didn't advance a runner. And they asked Yogi what happened after that series. He said, we made too many wrong mistakes.
Now, the ninth inning, the ball that Yogi hit in the ninth inning had Dick Stewart been playing there. It probably went up, caught it on the right field line. But
yeah, I asked Dick.
I
spent several hours with Dick Grote in 1985 when Pitt, the basketball team, came in to play St. John's. And basically, it led to my first Sabre presentation, which was the last 2 innings of Game 7. I asked Grote the same thing you just mentioned, what would have happened had Dick Stewart been playing first base instead of Rocky Nelson. And Grote said to me, he says, let's not go there.
Well, I had a meeting with Bill Verdon, and I asked him what his thoughts were when he hit the ball to Kubek, and he goes, I really don't feel like cursing right now. and then the ball hit him in the throat. Yeah,
if you do an analysis of play-by-play of that series, which is something I had to do in preparation for this talk I gave 30 years ago, you find that in almost every positive offensive situation for the Pirates, Verdon was involved.
He made
he was the Pirates' most valuable player during that series.
Yeah, he made 2 great catches.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, he started with the Cardinals.
He started with the Yankees and went over there. Went to never played for the Yankees. The Cardinals sent him there, and they slaughter trade.
Yeah. Oh. And they got him for Bobby Del Greco. Horrible trade.
Yeah, Pirates. Yeah, the Cardinals. That was Frank Lane. That was Frank Lane.
I remember Bobby Del Greco in the same ways that I remember Jim Pisoni.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Bobby Del Greco came up as a 19-year-old with the Pirates, played most of the season, 1952, and contributed to that team by hitting .217.
Is that the year that
Gene, how long have you been rooting for the Cardinals?
1953.
So basically, I mean, those early years with Frank Lane, trading Shane Eastoff, trading Slaughter off, trading Verdon off.
Musial for Robert.
Yeah, he tried to trade Musial. That's what got him fired.
And then he tried to trade Boyer for Clemente.
Yeah. That I didn't know.
I heard that Musial said that it wouldn't have been anything too unusual if he ended up in Pittsburgh for him.
He's from Denora.
Yeah, he was from there, and he wasn't thinking about his great record of shared by very, very few players, especially nowadays. A guy plays his whole career with one team.
There was a book that came out a couple of years ago called Frantic Frankie Lane about Frank Lane's trades, and the guy came to the conclusion that Frank Lane couldn't stand any player who got more publicity than he did.
That's why
he's the one who traded Colavito to Detroit for Harvey King when he was running the Indians. He built them up and then they ruined them.
Yeah, that was the classic one. You have to remember too that Harvey King was the prototype small ball hitter, traded for the prototype long ball hitter, and that was an incredibly interesting trade at the time. King was at the top of his game.
Yeah, but Colavito was the idol there, and according to this book, and I believe it, that Frank Lane got rid of him because he was more popular than Frank Lane.
The teenage girls loved him.
Yeah.
Like Bucky Dent.
Yeah, it was basically, and Lane did that with the Cardinals, he just got rid of Shane Easter, was an institution there, got rid of Slaughter, was an institution, gave away Bill Verdon for nothing. And he would make trades just, Beck said when Lane was running the White Sox and Beck was running the Browns, he used to trade the Willie Mirandas of the world back and forth every couple of weeks just to get newspaper space.
Hey, how many times was Minnie Minoso traded and Al Smith and those guys?
Minnie Minoso came from Cleveland to the White Sox in early 1951. And after 57, they sent him a utility infield named Fred Hatfield to the Indians for Al Smith and Early Wynn. That was that trade. Then Minoso came back in 1960.
Right.
And unfortunately, he missed both World Series.
Yeah, Smith and Wynn were in both the Al Lopez World Series. But Minoso never got into a World Series. Didn't one of them
miss both Smith or Minoso?
Minoso never played in the
World Series.
Minoso never played in the World Series.
Okay, it was him then. And Al Smith played in 59.
54, 59, and so did Wynn. Wynn was in 54.
That 59 White Sox team was incredibly interesting. Ted Kluszewski, Earl Torgerson, Bubba Phillips. Plus, they had what I consider to be the best up-the-middle defense in the National League, or in the American League at that time. They had Aparicio and Fox. They had Sherm Lawler, and I'll let
Jim
Al.
Landis.
And Jim Landis. And
yes, if you want center fielders that don't hit for the Hall of Fame, Jim Landis is perfect for that.
And they had two great relievers, Staley and Lown.
Yeah.
But the title of that chapter in my book, the 1959, is White Sox Win World Series, win pennant. White Sox win pennant.
The Yankees were awful that year.
Early
awful. Yeah.
I rooted for Cleveland that year. I really rooted hard for Cleveland.
Cal McLeish.
Rooted for the Braves in 58 and Cleveland in 59 after the Giants left New York. I floundered a lot, fan-wise.
Well, no Giant or Dodger fan, as far as I know, could ever bring themselves to root for the Yankees.
No.
And the Yankees' attendance in the 4 years where there's no National League team wasn't all that great. In 61, with the Mantle Maris thing, they only drew 1.75 million, $1.75 million.
And a lot of them were National League fans who wanted to see baseball.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
And what the Mets did when they created them was they fulfilled a need. National League fans were not going to root for the Yankees.
And that's why they got Snyder and Hodges and even Woodling, get New York people.
Both Dick Rote and Bob Skinner, who were on the 60 Pirates, were on the 64 Cardinals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Al, before I forget to ask you, I had a conversation with Robert Cole the other day about all these guys that were expected to do well with the Mets. Of all of them, Charlie Neal was the biggest disappointment. He had been Rookie of the Year. Was it Rookie of the Year?
No, it was McCovey. We went through this Sunday night.
I thought Charlie Neal was a Rookie of the Year.
No, you look it up. It was McCovey, even though he played, but maybe 50% of the season.
Neal was a Rookie in 55.
Did well, and then tailed off. Was optioned out, and came back. McCovey, but as far as a fall off in career, whether he won Rookie of the Year or not, he was a pretty good ball player with the Dodgers, and especially in '59 when they were in the World Series. What was his tail off all about? There were rumors.
He just lost it. Maybe he was having personal problems. Who knows? He just fell apart. One that was very similar to him was Zoyo Versalles, who was the shortstop for the Twins, who was the MVP in 1965 in the American League, and a couple of years later he was gone.
Yeah. Well, one of the things with Versalles, when he was there, Billy Martin in that year, when the Twins won it in '65, and Versalles.
Billy Martin was a coach there then.
He was a coach, and apparently was really tight with Versalles and vice versa. and he got him to pull that terrific year out of it.
And who knows? Maybe the Dodgers. I have to look this up. Maybe they tried to put Charlie Neal at shortstop because Pee Wee Reese was declining and Gilliam was still playing second base. I really don't know what caused it. All I know is that by the time he got to the Mets, he had nothing left.
Yes. Gene, let me ask you this before we get off the air. I want to ask you the 4 or 5 players who were on the ballot for the Hall of Fame this year and that whom you were disappointed that they didn't make it.
Well, Edgar, especially when he got that big hit against the Yankees in '95, that really helps me.
Right.
Anybody who does something good against the Yankees sticks to my mind. Kurt Schilling, although I would hope that he would get laryngitis, that would be good.
Yes, some sort of memory loss.
And Crime Dog. I mean, that's crazy, the Crime Dog. I mean, if he had 7 more homers, he would have been in.
Yeah.
And how can you have
Has anybody heard any PED rumors against McGriff?
No, never.
Really.
They said he was hurt because
why is he
was playing picking at the same time as most of the juicers. So he really got shafted by them.
And then I don't understand how you can get the number 1 power hitting second baseman. And he wasn't like he was maybe an average fielder, but he played there over 2,000 games with Jeff Kent. And he must have been really nasty to the writers.
Jeff Kent became a pretty damn good double play guy with the Giants. He
has all the power stats plus the 290 batting average.
Yeah.
And then the one that I voted for that I would have is Johnny Damon. Now people go like, Johnny Damon, what are you kidding me? Johnny Damon is number 32 in runs scored, and that's including some PEDers and some guys that played not in the modern era before 1900. And all the guys that are in the Hall of Fame, all the way to number 63, Lofton. Lofton's the next one, and he has 140 more runs scored than Lofton. And Damon doesn't get a look at all. And he probably had about 8, 9 type Hall of Fame-ish type seasons. And then he had excelled in the postseason. But he got like 1%.
How about Boggs, another guy who came from Boston to the Yankees? I don't think that helps a player when going to a rival in terms of record.
I'm sure it helped Babe Ruth.
Yeah, it helped him. He was the exception.
Yeah. I don't think they were a rival then, though.
No, but half of that team, that 19.
About 3/4 of the team with the Red Sox.
Right.
Yeah, I'm losing power on the phone here.
Boggs was a good ball player, wasn't he?
Very good. Look at his OBP, and they're incredible. He walked 100 times a year, over 100 times a year. His on-base percentage was incredible.
Anything you guys want to close with? Anything cathartic to get off your chest, guys?
I'm fine with this.
Get Arrieta.
All right.
Yeah, you were talking about the USA Weekly had a preview. They do a couple of teams a week until the season starts. The issue I just got today had a preview of the Brewers. Now, of course, there's nothing about Yelich or Kane being on the Brewers because that didn't happen.
Yeah, when you see print media do that and not be current, it reminds me of the Sporting News. As great a paper as it was, you'd get it, and it'd be a week old in terms of box scores and what have you.
A friend of mine told me he picked up the Street and Smiths yesterday.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's full of bad preview because the free agents situation hasn't sorted itself out yet.
Right.
So.
I thought they discontinued Street and Smith.
No, they put it out. I don't know who reads it anymore or buys it anymore, but this friend of mine saw it in the newsstand yesterday.
But I used to look at all the minor leagues for the Cardinals back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
I remember
that's what happened to Baseball America. That's what happened to Baseball America. They cut out the numbers from the print edition of Baseball America. It's garbage now.
Right.
All right, I'm losing power on the phone.
All right, guys, we'll end it.
Okay, Gene, great
really
talking with
appreciate you joining us, Alan.
Yeah.
Anytime. Do it on a regular basis. It would be terrific. Gene, the Yankee-hating machine maker. Al Blumkin, the Saber Star. And Ralph Zig Tyko, the weak link of it all. Saying goodbye, guys, and I'll ask you to do something. If you're out there listening and you enjoy our offerings, would you be kind enough, if you would, for me, to box up some lightly used children's books and take them to the Head Start program in the community in which you live? Kids need to read. They need to develop a passion. They need to get their noses out of the games and the devices, and they need to become school ready. They are our future. So if you do that, it would be terrific. Come back next week. We'll talk more Cardinal baseball. And like I say, this is fun for me, so please enjoy it yourselves.
Okay, take care.
Adios, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again, guys. Good night.